We have the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation, Dr. Peter Clayton, as well as the Director of Communications and Advancement, Mzuko Jacobs, all from Rhodes University. Welcome to everyone. Before I begin, I just want to share some alarming statistics with you. According to the latest quarterly unemployment statistics released just last week, the South African labor force is more favorable to men than it is to women. Men are more likely to be in paid employment than women, regardless of race, while women are more likely than men to be doing unpaid work. The rate of unemployment currently stands for women at 36.8%. This is in the second quarter of 2021, compared to 32.4% amongst men. This is according to the official definition of unemployment. The unemployment rate amongst Black African women currently stands at 41.0%. The latest unemployment stats I've just read show that the Black woman is most affected by unemployment and economic inequality. But how do we change this? How do we put the power in the hands of the young Black girl? Shortly, you'll meet our panel of extraordinary women who will be joining us this evening. They've all passed through the halls of Rhodes University and now occupy positions in different spheres of contemporary South Africa, from education to politics, media, and advertising. Our speakers this evening will share their journeys as well as their thoughts on giving back and giving forward. We hope that by the end of this evening, we will be empowered to do your own bit in your own communities, no matter how big or small. Can I please call on the Registrar of Rhodes University, Professor Adele Moodley, first, just to say a few words.
Thank you, Laura. Greetings to our Deputy Vice Chancellors present this evening, Professor Clayton and Professor Monapula Mapesela, to the staff and students of Rhodes University, members of the Rhodes alumni, and all who have joined us at this very special event on the last day of August of Women's Month. May I also, before I continue with my welcome, I'd like to request that we have a moment of silence in commemoration of those who have lost their lives due to gender-based violence and those who have passed on due to COVID-19. Thank you. Thank you very much. So once again, as Laura has said, a very warm welcome to all our women panelists who will be introduced by our hostess, Laura, this evening. This is a very significant occasion as the first alumni celebration of Women's Month. And I would also like to take this opportunity to introduce and to announce, rather than to introduce, our President of Convocation, who was recently elected this Saturday at the meeting of Convocation. She is Dr. Michelle Reiters, and we welcome her as part of the sisterhood in leadership roles and as an ambassador of Rhodes University. So I'm hoping that this evening, through this virtual platform, we will start new connections and engage on issues so important in terms of addressing the impact of matters and issues that affect women, and at the same time acknowledging gender as non-binary. I think, Laura, thank you, you've shared a few stats there that really continues to concern us all. The voices of women on issues of women affecting women and girl children need to be elevated, and Rhodes University is taking again one important step in engaging alumni in this regard. So this evening, I hope that you are comfortable wherever you are and that you will enjoy an evening listening to the conversations and that you will also engage robustly. I look forward to the day that we will engage face to face. And in the meanwhile, I encourage that we all keep safe and we continue to keep in touch with our alma mater. Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you so much, Professor Moodley. I'd like to take this opportunity now to introduce our panelists for the evening, if I may. So we'll start with Dr. Mandy Hlengwa. So Dr. Hlengwa lectures and coordinates the postgraduate diploma in higher education at Rhodes University. She also coordinates the New Generation of Academics program, the Nurturing Emerging Scholars program, and the Rhodes Mentoring program for early career academics. She is passionate about higher education and sees her contribution to the field emerging particularly from her concerns with the curriculum development. So welcome to Dr. Hlengwa. Move on to Leboghang Nkambule. She currently serves as the Rhodes University Student Representative Council President. She's also the founder of Diamonds in the Rough, a nonprofit organization aimed at empowering young women. She's also currently pursuing her honors degree in political and international studies. And through her leadership and community engagement into active programs, she's become even more passionate about social justice, change, and the empowerment of young women. She believes in the power and value of paving the way forward for young women. So welcome, Leboghang. We then move on to Janet Heard. So Janet is a Rhodes University journalism graduate who cut her teeth in the student media space during the state of emergency while working at the Star newspaper. She has worked in various newsrooms, including the Sunday Times, Cape Argus, and the Cape Times, as well as 3 years as the parliamentary editor at Media 24. In 2010, Janet was the Nieman Fellow at Harvard University. She has spent the past 4 years as managing editor of Daily Maverick and has played a role in developing the next generation of young journalists. She's involved in training and mentorship and is a specialist guest lecturer at the Stellenbosch University Journalism Honours Program. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you.
Moving on to Ayanda Mbanga. Ayanda is a Rhodes University journalism graduate as well, with more than 25 years experience in advertising and in media buying. She's a qualified professional business coach with a specific focus on career coaching and is often asked to address various audiences on the topic of women entrepreneurship, career development, and other related subjects. She's passionate about inspiring young people to redefine what success means for them and to ultimately bring about meaningful change in their professional and business lives. Welcome, Ayanda. And last but not least, we have Kim Cloete. Kim is a Cape Town-based journalist and media specialist. She is currently the Southern African media consultant for 2 global public health NGOs, which developed life-saving medication. Earlier in her career, she was the parliamentary editor for the SABC. She's had a very successful career in journalism, ranging from television, radio, print, and online. And in 2006 was the Nieman Fellow at Harvard University, like her colleague and our fellow panelist, Janet. She's won several awards throughout her career, including a CNN African Journalist of the Year Television Award. So welcome to you, Kim.
Thank you.
Thank you to everyone for agreeing to participate with this event. We look forward to hearing your insights. And if, as an audience, let me address everyone who's joined us for the webinar. If you have any questions or comments that you wish to pose, or that which you may wish to ask our guests, please do so via our social media platforms using the hashtag RU for Rhodes University, RU Alumni Conversations. Maybe just to kick off the conversation, I'd like to ask a question of the audience, which you can feed through onto our social media, onto our chat on the webinar, is what in our individual capacities can we do to mentor, uplift, and empower the African girl child? What practical suggestions and examples do we all have that we could use and put into practice? Let's share some ideas. I think we should change the narrative so that we'll be having different conversations by the time Women's Month 2022 comes around. Because every year we have the same conversations, but let's be creative and try change the narrative. And each in our own individual capacities as Rhodes alumni, as just regular citizens in our different fields, will all be able to contribute something. So please send those suggestions through and we'll read them through towards the end of the first round of questions and comments from our panelists. So let's get to that now. Now that we've all met the panelists, I want you all to reflect on your journeys thus far. What has shaped each of you as a person, and what has made you the person you are today? What has inspired you and driven you to see the success that you've had? Maybe let's start with Mandy, Dr. Hlengwa.
Thank you, Laura. So when I think about what has shaped me and what inspired me to be where I am today, I come from a matriarchal family where the women run the show, men feature, and of course they have their role, but the women in my family drive the vision and ultimately the execution of what we want as a family unit. This dates back from my late grandmothers, my mother, or Babekazi Bami, my older cousins. And so I literally just take from that. Coming from that kind of stock of women, I'm not surprised that I went into disciplines and areas of work that have landed me where I am now. I'm an academic developer at the moment. And previously in my life, I was a child and youth care worker. Both fields are dominated by by visionary women who I've worked with closely in socially just academic projects over the years. And yeah, so that's what inspires me, and that's what has shaped me, and that's what has got me to where I am today. I started off as a TA, keen to teach, and with the master's that came the research bag, and later on with a PhD. I could have never done that journey if it weren't for key women who saw potential, encouraged me, and that is something that I understand as generosity in academia, something that I really believe that everybody should be a recipient of, and is something that is my contribution in paying it forward. Thanks, Laura.
Thank you so much, Dr. Hlengwa. I think there will be some things that we can raise maybe once all the panelists have spoken. There are a lot of things that came up in your contribution. So perhaps let's move on to Leboghang now to hear her contribution. And then once we wrapped up with all the panelists, then we'll come back for some reflections and a Q&A. So Leboghang, over to you.
Thank you so much, Laura, and greetings to the DVCs, the registrar, panelists, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I think when I come to think about what it is during this time, and more so during this year, is so profound because it is the year of Umamushalo Tumakeke. So I'm very much reminded of what drives me and what has always just been my spirit in paving the way forward. And I'm reminded of a quote that says, "This work is not for ourselves. We should kill the spirit of self and do not live above others. And when you rise, bring someone with you." I think I'm an epitome of someone that rose and they brought me with them. So hence, I have always just found myself in a position where it was women that have always shaped me into the kind of leader that I am today, and killed the spirit of the selves and carried other young women into those spaces. So I think for me, that is what continues to drive me and continues to ensure that I also continue in the same trajectory of bringing someone else with me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leboghang. I think let's move on. Janet, if we could get your contribution next.
Hi, I think it might be apt to focus on the influence perhaps that Rhodes University had on me as a late teen arriving, being in the space. And I'm sure it will resonate with a lot of the graduates arriving, and the not really knowing where I was headed at all, really, as a career trajectory, although I came from a family of journalists, so people would say it's in my veins and my blood. I really was a typical rebellious late teenager and thrust into that era of the sort of state of emergency and the formation of the UDF at university. I think I was left with no choice but to either become an activist or a journalist. And that, you know, so the Rhodes campus had a massive influence on my whole being, really, from that time, where it gave me some focus and purpose, partly because of the time it was in the late 80s, but also it gave me a sort of focus to really get to know what it is that I wanted to do, and that was to try and make a difference, to empower, to change society, to stand up to authority and injustice. And those kind of things have stayed with me, I hope, today. And I've been influenced by lots of mentors and role models through that, lots of very strong women, and people that stand out from them are people like Cheryl Carolus back then, very defiant and courageous, and on campus, we had the privilege of, there would be people on campus coming like Tero Lakota and Gugile and Quinty from Port Alfred. And these really had a very big influence on, that ability, although it was such a painful time, the camaraderie around that time. I look now at students on campus during COVID, and my daughter's one of them, and that, the lack of campus activity must just be really, really quite tricky. So kind of those thoughts stay with me now to compare then and now. And I just hope that that changes very soon on campus life, because campus life is not just about the classroom. And those then just touching on some other things that really inspired me, and it was in the newsroom at the Star. I used to latch onto people like the older journalists, probably quite irritatingly. To find out how to be a journalist, I really learned through the student press at Rodeo and SASPU. So that helped me to be a reporter, but you don't really know that, that actually gave me the skills. But then I would latch on to people at the Star. And one person who comes to mind is Joanne Collins, who I used to follow around. And she took me to a detainees parents support committee tea party in Braamfontein the one day. And she taught me the power of observation in reporting. Well, I like to think she did. And I'll just never forget, because it was just a typical tea party of families and very non-political as such, but obviously it was steeped in politics. And then it was disrupted by the security forces. And it had such an impact on me, because I remember Joanne writing afterwards, writing about the teacups and the tea and the saucers that were untouched at this tea party after the disruption. So that those kind of, that thing about purpose and intent and observation really stayed with me. And I don't think she would even know that she had such an influence. But those are the people, those kind of little moments can make a big impact in your life. And now I try and, I see that giving back in some way, trying to help mentor younger journalists is what I really do try and focus on. I really get a lot of pleasure out of engaging with journalists, and I learn a lot from my colleagues, brave, courageous people all around me, which helps to keep the spirits up and to push on.
Thank you, Janet. I think a lot of us will have reflections on the Rhodes University campus. In particular, I know quite a few of the panelists, myself included, were Rhodes University journalism graduates. And I know we all have our own experience working in different medium, whether it was Rhodes Radio or any of the campus publications. So we can definitely reflect on that. And I'm sure some of the audience members as well, who maybe have passed through, the Rhodes and the journalism department, could comment on that. So I look forward to hearing some of those contributions. Let's move on now to Ayanda. What are, Ayanda, some of your reflections?
Thanks, Laura. Please excuse my voice. So upon reflecting on my journey, which is a 27-year career really, since I left Rhodes University in 1993, is that, we first, to move on in your career and to grow and develop, because I know there's a lot of people who are looking for opportunities out there. It is to be scared of something. You have to have something to lose. In my case, I was scared of my mother. So there was just no way that I was not going to pass. And there was just no way that I was going to fail when I got a job. So fortunately, by the time I wrote my final fourth year exam at Rhodes, I had been offered a job at Saatchi & Saatchi, which is a well-renowned advertising agency. And the gentleman who interviewed me for that position was a guy called Tim Groenewald. And I'm mentioning this because often we are so stayed in the way we want to look at things. And the point I wanted to make really with this intro is that often help comes from where we least expect it. And having been an only girl at home, I never really felt like a girl, I always had to fight my way through. And I'm just saying to the young people out there that are possibly on the webinar, it's really only up to us. We get opportunities, but sometimes we squander those opportunities. And you said in your intro as well, Laura, that we have the same conversations about Women's Month every year. I mean, for as long as we can remember. And it would be so great to just shift something through this conversation. And I'd like specifically the women out there to not be bogged down with the fact that they are women, to not be bogged down with the fact that they are Black women, perhaps, and not to be bogged down by the fact of where they come from. So it's just for me important just to say, in my 27-year journey, I've managed to maintain a business for the past 25 years because there has always been someone who's given me a leg up. So giving back for me says you just have to be there. You have to be present. You have to participate, and so that you're at the right place at the right time. I know it's quite a complicated thing that I'm saying, in the sense that it's not just that simple, but a lot of what determines, in my view, whether we go the right direction or not is just being present, being in the right frame of mind, being present. And like I'm saying, expecting opportunity from anywhere and from any type of person, learning from any type of person, and opening up yourself to those opportunities makes sure that you are at the right place at the right time. In my case, Rhodes was the right place at the right time. Tim Groenewald was my first boss, who took me in with his family when I first moved to Johannesburg, and I lived with them for a couple of months, gave me that leg up to settle in Johannesburg. And that's a lot. So there's little things I think that we can help our young women with, just to make it a little bit easier. But ultimately, they have to do the work. No one's going to do it for them. We all have to do the work in order to get on in life. So I think I'll leave it there for now. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks so much, Ayanda. I think that idea of being present is so important. And it goes beyond the monetary giving back. It goes beyond the physical giving back. It's almost just being a sounding board for someone else, because we've all gone through the same thing. So we'll touch on that a bit later. To wrap up this part of the panel, let's speak to Kim and hear what Kim has to say about your journey, Kim, and how you got to where you are.
Yeah, thank you so much, Laura. It's so inspiring hearing from the other women on this panel, and also just really amazing to know that our roots have been at Rhodes. And I have to say, I come from a family of strong women, but I think Rhodes really shaped me. It was just the perfect place. In fact, I was at UCT for my first orientation week. And at orientation week there, I was sitting in the lecture theatre, and I just thought, no, I need to be at Rhodes. And changed my mind and went to study journalism at Rhodes. And it was such an amazing experience. And it went so far beyond the lectures. It was just the whole feeling of camaraderie and the way you could feel free and express yourself at Rhodes and be a rounded person. So it certainly gave me the springboard to journalism and a career. And I'm so incredibly grateful for that. And then, afterwards, moving into being a journalist, first at the South African Press Association, and then later as a correspondent for AFP, Agence France Presse. A pivotal, amazing experience, because it was when Nelson Mandela was released. It was such a beautiful but also tumultuous time, especially leading up to the elections. And then moving to Parliament, where I had an incredible experience of being a journalist there. And also being able to chart the economic sort of trends and future of South Africa when Trevor Manuel was the finance minister. I had great opportunities to travel abroad to the WTO meetings and the World Bank meetings and the protests that went along with it. So it was a really good package, sort of all in one. And along the way, I had fantastic, just inspiring people that I interviewed, right from really powerful women leaders like Wangari Maathai, who was the Nobel Peace Prize laureate, to ordinary people who inspired me probably the most of all. In Malawi, I interviewed a 14-year-old who was looking after her three brothers during the AIDS pandemic, when it just swept through Africa. And she inspired me so much as somebody who could just be so present and be so there for the people. So all throughout, I think it's been a really inspiring and wonderful career to be involved in journalism, because it's a privilege. You listen to people all the time. You get a chance to report on people's lives, and also to hold people to account. So thanks to Rhodes for starting it all, and thanks to the women of South Africa and beyond for helping to shape me.
Thank you so much, Kim. I think let's take this opportunity now for some engagement amongst the panelists. So I just want to reflect on Dr. Hlengwa's contributions. You spoke about coming from a matriarchal family, you had strong women in your family. It sounds like there was almost a generational understanding at the time that women don't have a certain place where they need to be. So you can be whatever it is you want to be, just to lift everyone up. And that's something that's come through for all of the panelists really, is being present and giving other people a leg up. Do you maybe want to expand a bit more on that, Dr. Hlengwa, about this generational conversations and the kind of things that you spoke about with the matriarchs in your family? Because I'm sure a lot of us can relate, but I'd just be interested to hear some of those reflections for you. It was such a throwaway comment, but it was just so important, because often we talk about, there's this intergenerational conflict and, the older people don't know what the young people are going through, but actually we can learn from each other. So do you want to maybe reflect on that a little bit?
Sure, thanks, Laura. And you're welcome just to call me Mans.
Okay.
So I won't really necessarily remember conversations. My women in my family are doers, right? So, and they make things seem normal. So I have my late aunt. She built her house with her own bare hands, made the mud bricks. And I mean, later on, when you walk into the house, you if you didn't know, you wouldn't know it's made out of mud bricks. You'd think it's the regular bricks that we use today. So, and it's a no-brainer for her. She, her uncle gave her land and she's like, we don't have a house, so we build one. My mother was the same. It's like she got to be a principal at a school in the rural areas of Ulundi, and she got given a tree. They said, that's it, that's your school. So she built it with the community. So the women again built mud blocks and built a classroom by classroom by classroom. So I can't, I don't have a picture of us sitting around a table or around a fireplace and talking about what it is that or unpacking, as it were. We are a family of doers, and that's something that has stayed with me, and that's something that informs what I do. Now as an academic, of course, I have to then theorize and conceptualize and talk about it in other ways, but doing is a big part of what the women in my family do, and nobody is told where to be. We just go wherever we need to be, and women in my family just go for things. They just do. It doesn't seem like they have to think about it. They just do it. I'm sure we came up with a Nike slogan.
Leboghang, I can see you're smiling there. I think a lot of people are resonating with you quoting, if you rise, bring someone with you. Quite powerful words. What do you believe is your role? Obviously, with Diamonds in the Rough, your NPO that you run, being SRC president, I mean, at an extraordinary time in our lives, really, for all of us, no matter what age we are. I'm sure Rhodes must be completely different now to how we all experienced it with the pandemic over the last 18 months. What do you believe that you are doing and you can do with the opportunities you have, but also maybe to inspire the rest of us in order to just pay it forward and support, especially the Black girl child that we know, according to the statistics, is the most affected by poverty and unemployment?
Thank you so much, Laura. I must say, for me, when the panelists are reflecting on campus life and just reflecting on knowing the campus life pre-COVID and during COVID, oh my goodness, it is so different. Just walking around campus is now just so different. As students, we really miss that kind of engagement that we would have. It just, you get to see how much it shapes really who we are, literally as a campus and as Rhodes University. But more so just to reflect, when I came to Rhodes University, I had already started doing a lot of work around social justice and change, because I also come from a family where whenever there was an issue, my grandmother started a soup kitchen to address the issue of food insecurity. So for me also, Dr. Mandy, I come from a family of doers. If you see that there's there's an issue, let's come together, utilize our resources, and see how we could best assist. But I must say, I always say the Rhodes University Community Engagement Office, for me, was very much life-changing, because it really shaped and conceptualized the manner in which we look at giving back and also at paving the way for others. And in so, I realized in using so much of the pillars of community engagement, of sustainability, of utilizing what you have and what I have to best find a solution, but a solution that does not make me one dependent on another, but rather ensures that there's mutual benefit and that there's development. So for me, when I reflect very much on those experiences, that is what has shaped me even in starting an organization that empowers a lot of other young women, to say that we can be able to utilize our own resources and your resources to be able to develop one another. And I think that for me is so fundamental in paving the way forward. I was so excited last year when I saw, it's 5 of our girls from Diamonds in the Rough who are now students at Rhodes University. What was so touching was when we brought them pre-COVID to Rhodes University. At that time, I was at Atherstone House. And one of the girls said that you don't know how life-changing it is when we enter the space of Rhodes University, because you're making the experience so accessible to all of us. And I think that's something that is so fundamental, to see that in making a difference, when you touch that one person, you make so much of a difference, not only to them, but also in their surroundings. So I very much think that it is so fundamental in conceptualizing, paving the way, to be able to ensure that in paving the way, we are also ensuring that we are empowering another person. If they are empowered, they can be able to empower others. Thank you.
Thank you, Leboghang. Maybe as a way to introduce Janet, to reflect on what Leboghang's saying about campus life now, and the way that you experience campus life, your reflections. I think we can all attest to the influence that Rhodes, the actual physical campus, has had on, on all of us, on our careers and our studying journeys. But I've actually got a question for you. It's for Janet and or Kim. So I'll give both of you an opportunity to answer. It's from Julian Jacobs, who sent it through on our Q&A on the panel, on the webinar. And it says, how was it to work within newsrooms during the 1990s when you hardly saw any women editors? And how would you encourage the women in the audience today in relation to their work situations where opportunities are still not equal, based on the facts that I mentioned in the opening remarks? So Janet, maybe do you want to take that one, and then we'll come to Kim, and then go back to Ayanda to reflect on her answer to question 1.
Thank you. Yeah, look, there has been a huge amount of change in newsroom, the composition of newsrooms through the decades, obviously. I mean, if I look back at my days at the Star, all the mahogany row were men, definitely male editors in their it was literally a mahogany row where they would be in their big offices. And then I'm thinking the news editors were also male. Yep. But there were some really strong women reporters and strong sort of assistant editors who started emerging then. And so you could see it was starting to shift, but very slowly. And also it obviously was, in terms of the racial dimension, was obviously still also very pale. So, I mean, there's been obviously a sea change, but there's obviously a lot of work still to be done. I find now that there's a lot of young journalists are often women, perhaps because there's still this thing of the pay being so bad, and so we actually, when we get young reporters for our internships, often we mostly have women as interns, and our newsroom at Daily Maverick is there's definitely women far outweigh the men in the newsroom. I think overall, what I find, and my advice would be to women, is often you just don't get heard. So sometimes there might even be that situation of a so-called equality or demographic. It appears to be equal, but when you actually sit in a room and you can see who the people who get listened to, and I think often it's men who just assume that authority, and women who just get easily. They have to work harder to get heard, and I find that is a big thing still. That hasn't changed that much. I mean, obviously there's been a shift, but yeah. So, and my advice would be, you've just got to, somehow you just got to get heard and get noticed, and without. You maybe have to learn from the way men have done it. They're entitled, and that's what, so it's a kind of a playoff there. But I do find that for me is still where the power dynamics are very strong, where the men just get listened to and they expect to be heard, whereas women struggle in that environment. And that has shifted a lot. I mean, there's so many strong, powerful journalists that are women. But I wouldn't know, like in terms of pay, I'd be very curious to see how that pay structure that you described when you started, how it plays out in newsrooms now, because I think that's still, I'm sure those gender gaps are still there. And you've just got to push on. Women definitely have to try harder. Absolutely. It just doesn't come as easy. And obviously Black women have to try even harder. So it's up to women to also help support other women in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, you asked me to add on just slightly, but I mean, I would also, I mean, I don't have much to add, but definitely there was a very much a patriarchal kind of, positioning, obviously, in the newsrooms of the late 80s, early 90s, while and as Janet said, there's been an absolute sea change, but yes, not enough. And I think women need to really support each other on this as well, moving forward. I think women make excellent managers. They really know how to get things done. And, it's just proven really in newsrooms and in workplaces. And I just think we've got a lot that we can show that, we're really strong. The women in South Africa too, and are powerful in their own rights. They're just jugglers in so many ways. And I think that we really need to sort of, support each other and also, stand up, which we do, but, perhaps even more so. This is the generation for women. And, obviously without at all denying the rights of men, but I think this is the time for women to stand up, rise up, and, lift as we rise as well.
Thank you so much. Just before we move on to Ayanda, someone, Sandy Kricha, wrote on the chat here, in the late 60s, there were only 2 women in my newsroom in KZN. That's quite astonishing now, if what we're hearing, and I know certainly from what I've seen and what I've heard in bylines, is that predominantly women are taking over that. So that's quite amazing. Ayanda, I want to just wrap up this part of the panel with something that you raised about being present. I think it's so important that especially with almost mentoring roles that a lot of us occupy in the workspace is just being there and just being present, because we've all been through different iterations of the same issues, right? How are you present when it comes to the work that you do? And also I'd like to find out, have you ever told your first boss the impact that he had on your life, Mr. Groenewald?
I did, yes, definitely. So I'm going to speak really more from a coach perspective now, because that is what I do now. I'm a career coach. And a lot of the young women mainly that I encounter tend to have that fixation on being, I'm a woman, I'm a victim, I'm Black, I don't get it. So it's always moving from a point of negativity. And I'm not discounting all the ills. I'm not discounting any of it. I know it's there, but it is what we live with. That's why I said, unfortunately, sometimes when we get opportunities, we squander them because our focus is not on what is at hand. Because when you are empowered with an opportunity, like in Tim's case, giving me an opportunity to get the job, I got the job, I got in, I got stuck in, and that was all that mattered at that moment. And I think as a young person, when you're building a career, you have to take what you have and work with it and build from it and grow it, because ultimately it is our individual responsibilities. And that's why when you take that responsibility head on, you are likely to attract other people who will be willing to give you your leg up. So if you look at a little bit of my history, I worked for Saatchi for 5 years. And at the end of year 5, they offered me the opportunity to start my own business with their financial backing. So yes, there's a little bit of luck in there, but there's definitely right place, right time. It's putting in the right effort and building those relationships, because people also tend to want that leg up without putting anything into the relationship. Ultimately, I say to my clients, we are people. We are people. We're all the same. We're different as men and women, yes, but we are people. Our hearts pump the same. We all have the same desires, ambitions. We all want to do well. And that's why I'm saying I wish we could ever so slightly shift the fixation on being Black. Yes, we are Black. Yes, we are women. Yes, we've suffered. All of these things are happening, but we must not miss out on the good stuff. I think that's just really what I'm trying to say. And I'm saying here, I'm speaking strictly from the role of a career coach. And I work with a lot of women who are in corporate South Africa, and we know the ills of those environments, but there's a lot of work that we ourselves have to do to contribute to making things better.
Thank you, Ayanda. So we've heard a bit about, from the different panelists, about where you are now, how you got there, people lifting you up, bringing you up with them. I think now, if we move to the second part of the conversation, let's talk a bit about when we hear the term giving back, what does that mean to each of you? So we've also mentioned, and it might be a bit of repetition, but I really want to expand on this idea that giving back doesn't always have to be something physical. It doesn't have to always be a donation at the end of the month. If you, as we often talk about, is giving back in monetary terms. So when we think about giving back, what do we actually mean by those contributions? Maybe let's start with Mans as well. I find it very awkward to call you Mans when you've got a doctor in front of your name, but Mandy, let's start with you. When you think of giving back, what does that evoke in you?
Thanks, Laura. So earlier I spoke about generosity in the academic space. And for me, giving back is underpinned by a spirit of generosity, whether it is money, when you do have whatever you're able to afford, time and networking. For me, those are the three ways in which predominantly I give back. Money, because one of the places that I fund is the Rhodes Student Fund. Time, time is really, really precious. And it can, in a busy world, and when you've got a really busy career or a busy time as more than what you do as a job, as in a woman, a partner, a mother, whatever your other roles are, time can be an incredibly scarce commodity. But having a cup of coffee with a colleague or a mentee who just wants to, somebody mentioned sounding board, who just wants to know if they're going in the right direction, or who's feeling just a little bit lonely or bewildered. Cup of coffee, sit and chat, time, just to listen sometimes, not necessarily always to be giving advice. And networking, and sometimes when you listen to, I had an experience with my mentees 2 weeks ago, I mentor undergraduate students, and she was talking about, she's got this brilliant, she's written 4 books. I was like, you're in first year, you've written 4 books. Okay. She's written 4 books, obviously from her standpoint and what her experiences are. She says, so I don't know how to publish this. What do I know about publishing? But I have an ex-mentee who's in that area. And I said, okay, let me link you guys up and you guys can talk about what stage your books are at, what kind of work they still need to do, and what kind of publishing avenues you could do. So you know, the time and the networking thing for me sometimes go hand in hand, because if you give somebody space to talk to you, to have you as a sounding board, and if you're speaking to enough people, you can start seeing synergies and connecting people who may otherwise never find each other. So yeah, those are the three ways I think about giving back, and definitely from the spirit of generosity.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to Leboghang. Leboghang, when you think of giving back and paying it forward, what comes to mind for you?
I think for me, you know, as a student, especially in these times, I think that it's so important what Dr. Mandy has mentioned. Being a student, finding ourselves during these difficult times, whether if it's through funding shortfalls, whether if it's through understanding, navigating the virtual online world. And sometimes we underestimate the impact that really, really has on students in terms of academic excellence to your mental health. I think that it is so important to also further emphasize the importance of support, of time during this very abnormal times and in navigating that. And I think for me, that's very fundamental. And I'm reminded as a woman in a leadership space, the importance of mentoring women in leadership also, because we may celebrate it now, but it's still not very much a norm in a lot of spaces. We still find ourselves in a lot of spaces that are still very much patriarchal. And as women in leadership, it's still very much navigating a different kind of world also. So I think the mentoring is also so important. And the checking in the importance of networking. Many of us, like myself, as students, will soon enter into the labor market and have scholarships that would be made available. So I think that is so fundamental, because in that I can be able to ensure that I empower myself and others. So I think that is fundamental. And I think also giving back is in a means of a monetary value. And I'm thinking now as an SRC, just a few weeks ago, we had a sanitary towel drive. And I saw the importance of that, because I think most of the time we can take for granted how important the monetary, giving of monetary is so important in furthering women, because I very much think that sometimes it's something that we tend to forget, but I very much think that those are the things that I come to think about when I think of giving back to others. Thank you.
Thanks, Leboghang. Janet, let's move on to you.
There's I think the observations are so apt, what I'm hearing. I mean, I think what I would add is in newsrooms, and as a manager, I've only been a manager in sort of the latter part of my career, and I think what happens often and I'm sure it's in other business places as well, that there isn't enough mentoring, and there's often everything's so cutthroat that you don't have time to mentor, and just that little 5-minute conversation with that younger staff member that would make all the difference. And I do try as much as I can in my role, and I do see it as that would be my way of giving back, mostly is in trying to assist the younger team members to almost like a bit of a cheerleader role, where you just try and you can't put yourself into their shoes to really understand what they're going through, because obviously circumstances are always different, but to try and just give them the time. And I'm always aware that there is so little time. And I also think in terms of managing, you can't be a manager if you still so, like in journalism, if you just want your byline, because then you're going to steal the best stories as a news editor. And these things you see play out in different ways in newsrooms, which can be very destructive. Whereas I think when you become a manager, you have to accept that you're actually there to try and nurture talent and actually build talent and develop people on the team for the betterment of journalism and for everything. But if you keep putting yourself at the center, it can become quite a problem. And I've seen that a lot in newsrooms. So I think the giving back thing is very much part of management, in whichever management you are in, and actually realizing that that's part of the job, is to mentor and train and find time in your busy day to actually spend some time with the younger members of the team. And I think that there should be more space created for those in your daily job for those moments. And yeah, that would be my main thing in terms of, and I would like to do more always. I always feel like, gosh, I'm not, what am I actually doing to give back? And I think those are things to not lose sight of. The other thing would be just random acts of generosity when you can. So important. And it makes such a difference on people's lives, financially, I'm talking, and in any way, really, just to contribute and to not lose sight of that importance of just not getting complacent in a situation where you feel like you've done it all and you know it all, and then you're not really interacting to help others.
I think sometimes you may underestimate the impact that you do have on other people's lives. Like when Ayanda was talking about her first boss, which he keeps coming up, I'm sure when he was doing it, he had no idea the kind of impact he would have. So you as a manager, I'm sure in a few years' time, people would comment on you being, the one selfless and giving your time and mentoring. So some really, really great thoughts there. A lot of people concurring with you, Janet. We'll read some of their comments a little bit later. I just want to move on to Ayanda. Ayanda, in terms of giving back, what comes up for you?
So for me, when I was briefed about this meeting today, what comes to mind really is the fact that I feel I gain more by giving. The joy is really mine more than the person who's receiving, if you know what I mean. And there's so many ways. So for instance, if you are at a shopping center and you give the car guard 50 Rand. So for you, it's 50 Rand, but for them, it's something that it doesn't happen often. It gives them, I think, some faith in humanity that this person sees me. But for me, it's not even about the 50 Rand. It's about the joy that I get by seeing their eyes lift up. So I feel with giving, you gain more than you receive. So if in my coaching work, I get so much joy from just forgetting about my own challenges, because I have those. Everybody has those. But it's so nice to dive into somebody else's life and listen to them and lend an ear, really, without necessarily acting like you can solve their problems, but just by listening and just being that lending ear and seeing the physical relief that a person gets because they've had the opportunity to express how they're feeling and what they're going through without any judgment. So for me, it's that kind of work. I also do book reviews for a publication called Exit Magazine for free. What that does, yes, it's free. It's free time to the publication. It's an LGBTI publication, but it forces me to read thoroughly. So I gain that way, if you know what I mean. So I'm saying the point I want to make about giving is that by giving, actually, you receive more than the person who looks like they're receiving. So that's always been my position on that subject.
Kim, do you want to share your reflections?
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, just picking up on that, I think that's really kind of what it's all about, really, is to, you get so much more when you give. And I think during COVID, it's been so difficult because I think sometimes the need seems so overwhelming. You don't really know how to help. And I think sometimes the tendency is just to sit back and say it's just all too much. But this is the time when you really, really need to give more than ever, and actually seeing examples of people who've been amazing in the way that, they've given. And I think that's what we've got to do, is to help wherever you are. And so whether it's helping somebody who, with helping making soup, which I think many of us did right at the beginning, or at least throughout the lockdowns, or whether it's, mentoring somebody or giving advice, or just being there for someone, whether it's family or neighbor or within the broader community that needs it so much more, is so important. And then secondly, I think what's really I found become sort of vital is supporting entrepreneurs, especially young women entrepreneurs, but entrepreneurs just throughout, because that is going to have to be some kind of salvation for the South African economy. And I think that's one way of being able to help, is to tap into entrepreneurs and also the informal economy. So helping people in townships, helping people in areas where it's not my normal suburbia, but being able to step out of my comfort zone and try and support entrepreneurs that way is really important. And then actually, during COVID, obviously with so many people dying, it has also given me an opportunity to think, how would I like to leave some kind of legacy? And I've been thinking more and more about a bequest for Rhodes University, and I think it's really important. It's a tough issue, and you don't really want to think about that. But leaving a bequest, for my alma mater, for Rhodes, that's given so much to me, and which punches so much above its weight. I think what better way than to pay it forward through helping to support somebody's education. As a journalist, I'm hardly going to have a huge legacy, but for bequest. But I think it's important that we kind of look at that, especially maybe, I'm at the age where I kind of think of those things, and COVID has made it even more real. So that would be my kind of thoughts on the issue.
No, thanks so much, Kim. So I think at this time, I just want to reflect on some of the things that were raised in the second part of this panel. I also want to bring in the audience here. We received a message from Chantel Strauss, who said, I think what also helps is keeping your network of women as you move through life. My girlfriends that I met at Rhodes are still my friends today. However, I think we tend to shy away from engaging each other on a professional level, which men in most instances don't seem to have a problem with. And a couple of people concurring with that. I think this idea of networking, which Dr. Mandy raised, and I know I've certainly seen it during my career, where someone comes to me and says, well, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that, and I don't have all the resources, I can't help, but I know people. I think in a lot of our industries, networking is very important, and just being able to just almost, just put them on in a certain way. And, if you hear someone's looking for someone who would fit the bill, just say, oh, by the way, maybe speak to this person. So that idea of networking, and I think social capital is so important as well. And a lot of us have it, but we sometimes either we shy away from the things that we have, the networks we have. We don't want people to know maybe that we have all this information or we know these people, but just being able to share that. Because also if we don't speak up, then we're not going to know that person needs help, or that we ourselves can help. That was something that came up for me. Another message from Spusiso says, mentoring is really important for the development of people. I have a mentoring foundation if anyone is interested. So if anyone is interested, I'm sure we can connect offline after this. And then Christine Schreiber says, I concur with giving time and nurturing talent. The key to growing younger talent is leadership. The best leaders grow talent from within and allow people to make their choices and not hold them back. So I was wondering if any of our panelists had any thoughts on the networking, the social capital, and I think the selflessness that Janet raised about not always wanting to take the byline for yourself, but saying, as a manager or as someone senior, I'll let someone else, take it and have that experience. I'm not sure if anyone wants to comment on any of those, including from our audience. No one?
Sure. I remember my supervisor, I had two supervisors, but Chrissy Bowie, Professor Chrissy Bowie, she said to me, I would walk into a room or a meeting and somebody would already know my name, and I'd be like, how do you know what I do? And she was saying she saw part of her job as my supervisor as being my advocate. So again, that's part of a way of younger people or people who are not quite where you are in your career. Put their name out there. Put their name out there in spaces where they would shine, because that they've got something to offer. Sometimes they won't see it, But what we need to also do is actually look out for people who have got something to offer. And if you are in a room that perhaps they don't have access to yet, put their name out there. Make people aware that they've got something to offer and link them to it. So that's another way of the networking, of just promoting, advocating, putting people's name out there. Obviously, as going back to Ayanda's point of people still need to do the work, they need to still show up and do, but somebody's now got their name on their list.
Cool. If I might jump in here, we got a message from Alison Tucker, who says that, where is it here? Says that giving time to young people is not only valuable to them, it's also valuable to you. I learn a great deal from connecting with young women and always feel more energized and inspired than I did before engaging with them. That's very important. So it's almost a two-way street. But if there aren't any further comments from the panel, I'd actually think this is a good time to bring in just some ways that as Rhodes alumni, we can all stay connected. So when you came into the webinar earlier today, I'm sure you saw the video that was on a loop. And basically this is a new alumni portal that we've established at Rhodes University. So it's called RU Alumni Connect. And you can sign up to this portal on RU, so the letters RU, alumniconnect.ru.ac.za. And there's also a newly launched priority project, which is a way that alumni can give back to the university and to different organizations that are affiliated with the university. I know, Kim, you were saying, why not us leave something to the university if we feel that way. So you can connect here with ru.ac.za/giving to Rhodes. And all that information we will put in the chat and will also be available afterwards online. So I think at this time, I'd like to introduce the Deputy Vice Chancellor for Academic and Student Affairs, Dr. Leboghang Nkambule, to give us some closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Program Director. Do appreciate that, and good evening to everyone. This evening marks our very first Women's Month event organized by our Alumni Relations and Stakeholder Engagement Unit. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure you will agree with me that there couldn't have been a better way to end the Women's Month than to listen to these phenomenal ladies share their inspirational stories with us today. Mandy, Ayanda, Leboghang, Janet, Laura, Kim, thank you so much for letting us have a gaze into your lived accounts and experiences. Each of these stories of remarkable role models was so enriching. There are many lessons to learn from how these ladies have made it their business to grow, give back, and pay it forward. Mandy's story, from it we learned that she took after very strong women in her family who set the vision and ensured execution, doers. And from labels, borrowing from a great woman, Mayor Charlotte Matseke, this work is not for ourselves. Sharing with one person makes a big difference. Surely, if each one of us here today can do something good for a girl child or someone who is less privileged, then we will make a big difference. We also heard that, for many of these speakers, Rhodes University set them on a path to where they are today. Some painful times for Jeanette of the past led her into activism, using her voice to effect change and not being uncomfortable with some of the sad things that she witnessed at the time. Fear of disappointing her mother, that's one speaker. I guess that was really not fear of disappointing your mother, but it was deep respect and appreciation of your mother and her hard work to get you to Rhodes University. You talked about the importance of embracing opportunities and the fact that we should not play around with whatever opportunity that we get. And it really doesn't matter whether you are a woman, whether you are a Black woman, you do matter, and you can make a life of yourself if you are present and if you are in the moment. Kim acknowledged Rhodes University too, of having been a perfect place in a particular time in her life, and the fact that there are mentors everywhere and ordinary people whom we meet every day may have a great influence in our lives. So we need to be aware of such rather than to wait for formal mentors whom we do not really have in abundance. The Sesotho saying that says kopano ke matla. Those of you who know Sotho will understand that. There is strength in working together. This is so true. There is need for us to support each other, and in that we will gain more by giving, said one of the speakers today. I can associate with a lot of what these remarkable women shared with us today. They have been very inspiring. I believe you agree with me. Thank you so much for honoring our request to take part in this special event. I'm sure you have very busy schedules. Therefore, your willingness to share your time and expertise with us today will forever be cherished. This has been critical for the success of this event, which closes off the Women's Month. Our university continues to explore ways of creating opportunities for our alumni to engage with their alma mater on various topics of importance. I'm therefore certain that we will have many more engagements of this nature during this difficult time and beyond. My sincere gratitude and appreciation to all the colleagues who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, and to everyone who made this day a success today. Your hard work is greatly appreciated. Last and certainly not least, I would like to thank our audience, each one of you, for putting your evening chores on hold to grace this event with your virtual presence. As a token of appreciation to our panelists, the Alumni Office will send you vouchers to purchase university-branded merchandise from our new online merchandise store, which will be launched next month. For those of you who'd like to buy from our online store, please look out for more details on our social media pages. Thank you all. Leboha. Have a good evening. Malubongwe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Leboghang. And just to wrap up, obviously if you're watching it, you haven't missed it, but if anyone you know has missed this webinar, the recording will be available on the Rhodes University YouTube channel, the Rhodes Oldies Facebook page, and of course, the RU Alumni Connect portal. So thank you so much to everyone for joining us this evening. We hope it was lovely and beneficial to you, and we hope you really got something out of it. Thank you to our panelists. Thank you to the Rhodes University team. Thank you so much to the audience. Have a beautiful evening. Stay safe. Good night.